Returning to 2003, Chen Nian witnessed a magnificent era. In this era, the J.10 has not yet entered service, Varyag has just arrived at port, and the Dongfeng 40 is still a distant legend. At the same time, the F.22 has made its maiden flight for 6 years, the Reagan is in service, and the number of modern aircraft carriers in a single country has reached 9. The B.2 has shown great power in practical combat. Meanwhile, there are also those rapidly evolving civilian technologies. Ultra-high precision machine tools, large heavy-duty machinery, large ships, high-performance engines, and we don't have any of these. But soon, we will all have it. Mastering the technology analysis system, Chen Nian started from the military industry and gradually brought the technologies he was once familiar with to this era. And these technologies will eventually become the spark that ignites civilization. Sparks are passed down from generation to generation, flying tirelessly. Keywords of the novel. Spark without pop-ups. Download the complete set of Spark TXT, and read the latest chapters of Spark. Chapter 1. Analysis of F.22. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 1 Analysis of F.22. On May 1, the U.S. military's large-scale combat operation in Iraq ended. According to official U.S. statistics, a total of 168 people were killed, 554 were injured, 3 were missing, and 20 fixed-wing aircraft and helicopters were lost in this operation. The Iraqi military and security forces have lost approximately 60,000 combat personnel, approximately 5,200 ground armor of various types, and more than 700 combat aircraft. In the classroom of the aircraft manufacturing major at Xi'an University of Technology, the calm broadcast of the host came from the big buttocks of the TV, while everyone in front of the TV fell into silence without exception. After a long time, someone spoke up. 38 days. I thought it was just an exploratory attack, but I didn't expect that they were heading towards annihilating the country. The speaker's face revealed a clear sense of despair, while the expressions of the others were similar to his. Chen Nian silently sighed and remained silent. Yes, if it weren't for travelers like myself, no one in this time and space, even the decision-maker standing at the top, would have thought that this war would end in such an exaggerated or even eerie way. With 150,000 soldiers, nearly 2 million were pinned to the ground and beaten, and the proud tank troops of the Iraqi side were pressed one after another to open cans. They were beaten to the end, and even the planes hiding in the anti-explosion bunker had no chance to take off. This is the crushing of technology, as well as the crushing of the concept of war. Iraq is also too weak. Even if it were Vietnam, the United States wouldn't have fought so easily, would it? It is said that there are traitors, and the ground troops have not even entered. If the army confronts, Iraq still has a chance. Army, who's fighting with you in the army? It's not like the Air Force bombing. As soon as these words were spoken, everyone fell into silence. Not willing to accept it. But what if you're not willing? Chen Nian remained silent. Compared to others, he knew that the future must be bright, but at this point in time, it was really difficult for him to come up with convincing arguments to comfort his pessimistic classmates. What are you saying? In the future, we will have 3 aircraft carriers, dozens of 10,000-ton destroyers, and dozens of 5th-generation aircraft. These students shouldn't say they don't believe it, it's just that it's too far away. I heard that the Americans haven't even deployed their troops this time, and there are still many more advanced weapons that haven't been produced. F.117 and B2 have both been deployed, aren't they advanced enough? What about the F.22? This thing made its maiden flight 5 years ago and has not been put into combat yet. Americans probably don't think it's necessary at all. I really don't need that plane. If the data we have on hand is true, it's enough to fight aliens, isn't it? I don't know when we'll have such a plane. Almost, I heard there's a new design in Chengdu, but it's still in the confidential stage. Do you still mention the confidentiality stage? The project is public, I don't know what it is. Anyway, even if it's built, it won't be able to catch up with the F.22. I feel like we're already far behind. So what? Chase, one day we can catch up. Upon hearing these words, Chen Nian couldn't help but smile. Sure enough, I didn't make a mistake in choosing this school. Compared to the other universities where his scores can reach, the students gathered here are still much better. This excellence is not only in professional knowledge and skills, but more importantly, it is a confidence in the country. Even though they have suffered such a heavy blow, no one says they want to give up. Thinking of this, he finally couldn't help but speak up. Don't worry, we have a latecomer advantage. You see, the J.10 is expected to officially enter service in a while, at least on third-generation aircraft. We won't fall too far behind. What should we do? When it comes to building airplanes, no one in this country has a greater responsibility than us. Rather than just watching TV, it's better to go back and study aerodynamics again. Upon hearing Chen Nian's words, the person who first spoke nodded in agreement and immediately said to Chen Nian. Hey, Chen Nian, have you finished your interest homework from last class? What did you do? In the previous class, Chen Guo, the teacher of aerodynamics, assigned a very interesting assignment. Refer to or design your own airplane. Of course, only limited to appearance. The presentation format is not limited, you can draw drawings, make models, or if you are skilled, even if you use clay to knead. The main purpose of this assignment is obvious, which is to arouse everyone's interest in spacecraft design. Through the explanation of student works, it aims to establish the concept of spacecraft aerodynamic layout for students in a simple and concise manner. This is probably a traditional program in the spacecraft design class, even freshmen like Chen Nian have long heard of it, so no one will treat it perfunctorily. The F.22 I made was just a drawing, not particularly detailed. Me too. Hey, with too little information now, I can still draw an outline. I can't even draw the outline well. How are you doing? I'm not the same. As soon as the topic opened, everyone in the classroom chattered about homework. Chen Nian followed suit and chatted a few words. He heard that most people still used existing aircraft as templates, and of course, there were also those who copied science fiction novels. But that was too much imagination. By contrast, my F.22 design is average. Thinking of this, he pulled out the 3 views that had taken him a whole 3 days from his desk. This picture was drawn entirely based on his past memories, but even so, the details on the picture are far from precise. At best, it is just a more reasonable artwork compared to CG illustrations. There's no way, back in this era, being able to do this is already his limit. Chen Nian sighed. He had originally thought that the progress of many things could be accelerated after returning from his travels, but based on the current situation, it seems that we still need to take one step at a time, and those destined humiliations are also inevitable. Hey. Just as this thought flashed through his mind, he suddenly realized that something strange had appeared in front of him. That's the subtitle. F.22 fighter jet. This is an extremely advanced fighter jet, consisting of the body, power system, landing gear, control system, hydraulic and pneumatic system, fuel system, and other parts. It is a precious crystallization of modern industry, and by analyzing it, one can gain a lot of knowledge related to it. Analysis completion rate 0/6, number of parsing source points. 1. Each parsing consumes 1 source point and can be completed for a single module, current number of modules. 6. System. Chen Nian hardly hesitated and subconsciously said in his mind. Analyze F.22. Subsequently, another new line of subtitles appeared before his eyes. Please choose the parsing direction, analyze the body. At that moment, a huge amount of knowledge rushed into Chen Nian's mind, and he almost fainted due to severe pain. But at the same time, those unfamiliar and familiar nouns began to hover in his mind as if they had taken root. Flat matrix cross dot section, ridge-shaped forebody, slat wing, moderate sweep angle. His eyes are getting bigger and bigger. This is really. It's the body layout of the F.22. End of this chapter. Chapter 2. Remapping. You are listening at Novel Full. Audio. Chapter 2. Remapping. Chen Nian sat still, the transmission of information still ongoing. After the initial transmission of pure nouns, data comes with it. His mind not only clearly presented the shape of the F.22, but also had a clear understanding of the angle of each edge and the length of each line. And this is not over yet. Going further down, he also learned the principles of the design. Why use slat wings, why use medium sweep angles, why use fuselage wing fusion? It was not until this moment that he fully understood this unique raptor. And he almost trembled all over as a result. F.22, in his previous life, as a peripheral military industry practitioner, he had countless debates with others about how to shoot down this big bird. At the beginning, in his young and ignorant youth, his view was to use Bayes' high-speed collision, even if 8 planes were exchanged for one, as long as they could break through the beyond line of sight air-to-air firepower blockade and reach the distance of a dog fight, they would definitely be able to knock down this raptor with only 480 rounds of machine guns. Later, his dream was completely shattered by the 180.1 loss-to-loss ratio of the F.22 simulation against third-generation aircraft. He began to realize that some technical differences could not be compensated for with a single dose of courage. He once fell into deep doubt as a result, doubting whether his country had lost all hope of a comeback, and doubting whether the seemingly powerful army would be like Iraq, being pressed to the ground to open cans. But fortunately, not long after, the J.20 flew. He searched for the keyword J.20 online countless times, and even couldn't help but shed tears on the spot when he saw the beautiful, 6-winged angel at the Zhuhai Air Show. He always felt that it was a turning point. But he also knew in his heart that the gap still existed. The differences in aviation, vector nozzles, and materials will accumulate to create a huge drop. If you want to continue moving forward, you must constantly pursue breakthroughs, the earlier the better. And this is exactly what Chen Nian tried to do after his rebirth. But the problem is, that's too difficult. The accumulation of technology is not achieved overnight, let alone the core issue of aircraft development. Even in terms of exterior design, there is a significant gap between China and the United States in 2003. But now it's different. My own system has malfunctioned. Moreover, we also solved the problem of a whole module at the first time. Appearance design is not simply a matter of plagiarism. As long as the knowledge in one's mind is brought out, it can definitely bring new development to China's spacecraft design. Thinking of this, Chen Nian excitedly looked at the blueprint in his hand. The painting, which was originally considered exquisite in his eyes, has now become so rough that it is intolerable. This angle is clearly not right. The edges and wings are all drawn crooked. The binary vector nozzle is not like this. The characteristics of the Galette intake duct have not been depicted either. Redraw. Without any hesitation, Chen Nian threw the blueprint aside and then took out a new pen, paper, and ruler from the box. He immediately started and drew the first straight line on the paper. This will become the central axis of this drawing. Subsequently, around the central axis, Chen Nian began to gradually fill more lines upwards. The fuselage, wings, landing gear, and even explosive cables arranged on the hood. There are no omissions. With his movements, classmates who had already finished reading the news and were about to leave also gathered around. The boy named Li Xiang, who had drawn the F.22 like him, looked curiously at the gradually formed shape. His eyes gradually widened. Sleeping trough, Chen Nian, is that what you said is similar to mine? Is this line, this precision much stronger than me? Okay. Wait, why is the angle so small here? Chen Nian's subordinates kept answering as he continued. The mid-plane of the F.22 should have an inward tilt of 35 degrees to avoid side radar detection. This is the mainstream of stealth design and not difficult, but it is important to simultaneously consider the maximum improvement in lift-to-drag ratio. Listening to Chen Nian's explanation, Li Xiang nodded repeatedly and continued. It makes sense. Indeed, there is no one who studies. To be honest, you have been soaking in the library every day since you entered school. How many books have you read? You haven't looked too much either. Chen Nian answered perfunctorily and then devoted himself wholeheartedly to the work of drawing. As his movements became faster and faster, the classmates around him gradually quieted down. Even the communication between them has turned into low whispers. Chen Nian's painting doesn't seem that simple. Is this really a physical design? I don't know, I can't understand, but at first glance, this size is carefully designed. Where did he get the data from? The F.22 data is not even in the hands of the country, right? You're stupid, you must have deduced it yourself. I heard that several senior students in our school are also doing this job, and it's probably the same logic. They have more basic data in their hands than Chen Nian. That's for sure. You see, he's not particularly familiar with that side strip wing. He has altered it several times, so he probably can't be sure. Even so, it's much stronger than me. Nonsense, they go to the library every day. What about you? It would be great if you could go 3 times a week. Damn it, it makes sense. I won't go on a date tomorrow. I'll go to the library to preview engineering thermodynamics. Time passed by minute by second, and the F.22 on the paper gradually took on its full shape. With Chen Nian's final stroke, the classmates around him let out a unanimous sigh. Nyobi, this picture was created, even if it doesn't compare to anything, its technique is much stronger than mine. Chen Nian, have you learned it before? Chen Nian exhaled and rubbed his slightly sore wrist, then replied. I think I've learned it for a while. These are all very basic things, and I'll be able to practice them. Of course, the fact is not as simple as he said. The good drawings are his work accumulation from over a decade in his past life. Your picture is great. How do you say it? Good standard, it's like the F.22 should be like this. Is it the layout you pushed out yourself? Based on the picture, there may still be some margin of error. Whether there are any errors or not is amazing. Chen Nian, don't wait for the next class. Hurry up and go to Teacher Chen's office to show him. Maybe it can inspire their work a bit. Upon hearing this, Chen Nian nodded. Of course, the design drawings should be handed over to the teacher in the country, and there is no doubt about it. However, before submitting, he still needs to do some things. This picture only has a shape at the moment. To make it usable, further annotation of the data is needed. And this step is completely heavy and tedious work. He needs some more time. End of this chapter. Chapter 3. Handing in homework. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 3. Handing in homework. In the following days, Chen Nian spent a lot of time completing the data annotation of this F.22 drawing, even accurately positioning a rivet to the millimeter level. And the drawings in his hand also grew larger and larger, from the original desktop square, gradually becoming a 2 by 2 large image, and then becoming a thick stack. Fortunately, the information in his mind is extremely clear, otherwise, just considering the arrangement of each component would make him suffer unbearably. Finally, it took Chen Nian a full week to complete a relatively satisfactory exterior design drawing. After completion, he didn't hesitate and immediately packed up his things and left the library, rushing to the office of the aerodynamics teacher Chen Guo. In fact, every teacher who teaches in schools these days is a crouching tiger and a hidden dragon, and Chen Guo is no exception. He is certainly not just an ordinary university professor. As a Northeasterner, his identity within the organization was as an aerodynamic consultant at a design and research institute called 601 Institute in northeast China. Over the next decade, he participated in the design of a series of new fighter jets, including the famous bomb truck J.16. Although his qualifications and reputation have not yet reached their peak, he is still one of the few in terms of body design. It's difficult enough for outsiders to just make an appointment to see him, not to mention that he may not be able to meet yet. But for students like Chen Nian, it's much simpler. Go directly to his office to find him, and most likely he will be there. The journey was smooth and unobstructed, and when Chen Nian arrived at the teaching building where Chen Guo's office was located, she was about to go straight up and knock on the door when she saw someone waiting at the door. He hesitated for a few seconds, considering whether to knock on the door first to check the situation or wait outside, but the man in a suit and leather shoes spoke first. "Little brother, are you also here to find Professor Chen? You look like a student, right?" The man had a gentle voice and a smile on his face, and Chen Nian politely replied. "It's a student who came to find the teacher to hand in their homework." "Are you a graduate student? You look quite young, shouldn't you be a doctoral student?" Chen Nian shook her head and said, "No, freshman." "Oh, freshman year." The man was clearly disappointed inside, saying, "I thought you were a graduate student when I saw you holding so much information in your hand. Is that all the homework for first-year students?" "That's not true. It's just my own interest." "What's your surname? Do you have anything to do with Professor Chen?" Seeing that the door to Chen Guo's office had not yet opened and there was still a faint sound of speaking coming from inside, Chen Nian sat down on the specially placed chair at the door and waited. "Excuse me, my surname is Lu and I have bangs. I wanted to hire him as a technical consultant for us, but it's not easy to see Mr. Chen. He hasn't been here several times and I haven't seen him either." "Technical consultant?" Chen Nian repeated in confusion. Chen Guo is someone who specializes in aerodynamics. Apart from those national research institutes, who else would hire him as a technical consultant? At first glance, private enterprises are the ones that need to visit, but the domestic aircraft industry has not yet developed. Is it difficult for foreign enterprises to do so? "Yeah, we are from Sena's aircraft company. We have just launched an agricultural machinery project and plan to develop a suitable agricultural fixed-wing aircraft for the domestic situation. Isn't this a shortage of people? We plan to ask Professor Chen." "I didn't expect that they wouldn't even see me," saying they didn't have time. "I've been waiting here for several days now. Little brother, if you come in later, can you help me take a message to the teacher? Just say it's bangs, the cost is easy to negotiate." Sure enough. After listening to his words, Chen Nian had completely guessed the reason why Chen Guo was unwilling to disagree with him. "It's not that you look down on money, and it's not related to confidentiality terms. It's purely because you're from a foreign company. More importantly, you still manufacture agricultural aircraft. Nowadays, intellectuals still have a bit of arrogance. A person who sacrificed himself for the country's important weapon, do you want him to spend a lot of time building small agricultural planes for foreigners? It's normal not to want to." With this in mind, Chen Nian spoke up and said, "I don't think you'll have many opportunities anymore. Teacher Chen has a lot of projects on his hands, not just related to the school, but also to the research institute. Since you're willing to contact him, you should be clear about it in your heart. It's because I understand clearly that I've been looking for him multiple times." Lu Hai interrupted Chen Nian and said with a somewhat disdainful expression, "What's the future of building fighter jets these days? Look at them Americans, that's what they call airplanes. What do we call them? They're not even good at toys. What other fighter jets are there and what are good ones to build? Why not go overseas and earn more money and pay more taxes? Can't you use the tax money to buy fighter jets outside? Isn't that how people in the underworld do it? Aren't they living well too? Chen Nian's eyebrows furrowed and he said with some displeasure. We are currently backward, but isn't it because we are backward that we need to work hard? Otherwise, we will be left behind for the rest of our lives. That also depends on whether hard work is useful. Look at our J.10, how many years we've been boasting about it, and the result is that we've brought out this thing. Not to mention the F.16, it's not even as good as the F.14. If you say these researchers are amazing. I'm not targeting you, I'm not targeting Professor Chen. What I mean is, if it really works, there's no need to delay until now, it could have been done more than a decade ago. Isn't it a pure waste of the country's resources to invest so much money and people every year without achieving results like this? I think it's better to release these researchers. Nowadays, various foreign companies are short of people, so maybe they can still apply for skilled immigration. Are you just looking down on our country like that? Looking down on us people? Chen Nian's tone was cold, and Lu Hai also realized that he had gone too far, so he said in a casual tone. I think you great young people should not waste your time in such useless places. I don't think this is useless, we also have our own achievements. What achievements? The whole country has no achievements, not to mention you're young. Having ideals is good, but we also need to assess the situation. Chen Nian was too lazy to talk to him anymore, and just then, the door to the office opened. Chen Guo smiled and saw an elderly man with white hair out the door. Ignoring the fact that the two were still talking, Lu Hai rushed forward with one swift step and grabbed Chen Guo, saying, Professor Chen, I'm here again. You must show your respect this time, let me talk to you. Don't worry, even if you still don't agree this time, we will still pay our consulting fees. Chen Guo's face showed obvious impatience. He glanced at the bangs and said. Xiao Lu, how many times have I said it? It's not a matter of money. If you still use this kind of rhetoric, I'll report it to the security office starting tomorrow. Don't even come in at the school gate. Lu Hai quickly pretended to slap himself in the mouth and said. Blame me. I'm also in a hurry. Don't think too much, I'm absolutely sincere and have no other intentions. Can you give me half an hour today? No need for half an hour, 20 minutes is enough. Chen Guo sighed helplessly. If I don't talk to you today, it won't be easy for you to go back and hand over the task. Let's take 10 minutes. After speaking, he was about to turn around and return to the office when he suddenly saw Chen Nian standing on the side. Hey! Xiao Chen is also here. What is he holding in his hand? They are all young generation, and Chen Guo's attitude towards Chen Nian is much better than Bang's. However, there is no teacher who doesn't like this diligent student. Teacher, it was the interest assignment from last time and I wanted to see you in advance. With this statement, Chen Guo became interested. He walked up to Chen Nian, flipped through the pages in his hand, and curiously asked. Did you draw so much? What did you draw? F.22. F.22, this thing is not easy to handle. Hush, your drawing is so delicate. Chen Guo quickly flipped through several covers on the surface, and when the huge 3-view appeared in front of him, his expression was stunned. Data, all data. The densely packed data almost filled the entire paper, and in comparison, the lines and contours were not as prominent. He didn't bother talking much and grabbed the blueprint from Chen Nian's hand and sat on the chair outside the door. As he further flipped through it, his expression gradually changed. First was surprise, then shock, then seriousness, and then a look of emotion, excitement, disbelief, and even some fear appeared on his face. He raised his head to look at Chen Nian, and after watching for more than 10 seconds, he said in a stern tone. Chen Nian, come with me. The bangs on the side became anxious, and he quickly approached Chen Guo and said. Professor Chen, what about me? Chen Guo didn't even look at him, only left 2 words. Wait. End of this chapter. Chapter 4. Origin of drawings. You are listening at Novel Full. Audio. Chapter 4 Origin of drawings. Where did your picture come from? Don't tell me you drew it yourself. As soon as he entered the office, Chen Nian directly locked the door and suppressed his voice to a level that only he and Chen Nian could hear. This is a natural precaution. In his heart, Chen Nian's set of pictures is definitely tricky. The way is not right. Because the data above is too detailed and logical. Even if it was just a rough glance, Chen Nian could immediately know that this thing should definitely not be something that a freshman who has just been exposed to aerodynamics courses could draw. Needless to say, the greatest possibility is that he obtained the spy leak document through some means. If that's the case, then the danger of this picture is far beyond one's control. Teacher, I really drew it myself. I spent a whole week perfecting it bit by bit, and my classmates in the library could testify. Even Li Xiang sat next to me and watched as I made the changes bit by bit. Chen Nian had long anticipated this situation, so throughout the entire process of drawing, he left behind evidence of originality. Of course, it is not to avoid theft, but to prevent the country from treating this image too cautiously for certain security reasons. He doesn't want this matter to escalate into a diplomatic dispute. Upon hearing his answer, Chen Nian frowned and shook his head. His gaze was fixed on the stack of blueprints on the table, and he whispered softly. I still can't believe I can't understand. How did you do it? By learning. By relying on my own learning, I can still believe anything you say is due to talent. Come on, you said you drew this picture yourself. Now tell me, what is the purpose of the rectangular narrow pitch engine layout of the EP1-10? The rectangle is designed to facilitate airflow rectification at the rear of the fuselage and reduce rear fuselage drag, while the narrow spacing is designed to reduce supersonic drag. What about the galette intake duct? You drew a device here. Tell me, what device is this? What is its function? That's the airflow control door, which can deflate during high-speed flight, allowing the aircraft to still use high angles of attack. That is, it can more conveniently perform Cobra maneuvers. Principle. Utilize the oblique airflow of deflation to form wing vortices. You his mother did it yourself. Chen Nian couldn't help but curse. If the first two questions can still be considered as Chen Jiu stealing knowledge from ready-made drawings, then the third question about principles cannot be stolen knowledge. It should be noted that wing vortex is the most complex part of aerodynamic design, and even top talents in the industry can be a headache for it. Even if he is the top spy in the world, it is impossible for him to provide not only technology, data, but also principles for the insider. Imagine a spy who, after receiving the design drawings of an EP1-10, said to the person who gave him the drawings. Hey, buddy, I know about this thing but I don't know why. Otherwise, if you suffer again, find a core engineer to give me a theory class, and the class fee will be preferential. Is this possible? What is this? Dreaming back to Big Brother's honeymoon period. Impossible. So, the only explanation can only be he really calculated it himself. But if that's the case, then the strength displayed by the young man in front of him is really a bit terrifying. As freshmen, the intelligence they can obtain about the EP1-10 is nothing more than a few photos, a short description, and documents related to core design principles, even on the side of Qingfei. When I first worked with colleagues from Qingfei to deduce the design of the galette intake duct, it can be said that I had a strong presence in front of colleagues from Qingfei. At that time, some even praised me as the hope for the future fifth-generation aircraft. But now, this young man actually drew it so lightly. There are no mistakes or omissions in the drawing. Is this talent? Looking at Chen Nian's flushed face, Chen Nian quickly said. I really drew it myself, but I have been preparing it for a long time. I love to self-study on my own and my theoretical knowledge is basically okay. I can barely calculate it. Do you call this barely? Chen Guo pointed to the dozens of pages of drawings in front of him and asked in silence. It's quite forced. This is just a preliminary configuration design. If it's accurate to each component, it would probably take several thousand pages, right? Can you still draw specific components? Chen Guo was completely stunned. He thought this pile of drawings was Chen Nian's limit, but he didn't expect that he had just started. I think there are some preliminary ideas. Chen Nian replied. Tomorrow, please don't attend class for now. Come with me on a flight to 601. I need you to talk about this on site. And from now on, you are prohibited from discussing this set of drawings with anyone, and we will downplay those students who already know. You have entered the confidential sequence, can you understand? Chen Guo immediately gave the order, and at this moment, his military style was undoubtedly revealed. Component design is not just about configuration design. If the configuration is a small lake, then the component design is a vast ocean. Now Chen Nian said he has some preliminary ideas. No matter how preliminary these ideas are, even if they only scrape a thin layer of the sea, they are enough to fill countless lakes. Upon hearing Chen Guo's words, Chen Nian immediately nodded. No problem, but can I not go to 601? Why? Is there pressure? No, it's not. Chen Nian smiled shyly and replied. I want to stay at school to study and have relevant personnel come over. In fact, this is not an escape, but because of a very practical problem. He must constantly learn in order to obtain additional parsing source points. This is the conclusion he has drawn after familiarizing himself with the system in the past few days. Learning is like a means of charging, and every time he gains new basic theoretical knowledge, he can charge his system. If one source point is fully charged, a parsing can be performed. During the process of drawing, he also referred to several books, although they were all skimmed through, they also brought him a profit of 0.01 source points. So, he must continue reading and studying, which is currently the most efficient way for him to obtain sources. Even in class, he cannot catch up. The reason is simple. In class, we need to consider everyone's progress, but in self-study, we only need to consider ourselves. He just needs to accumulate the source points at the fastest speed and complete the analysis of the remaining modules. Huaxia must have a 5th-generation aircraft, and must quickly have a 5th-generation aircraft that can quickly mass-produce, form combat effectiveness, and step on the F.22. Every minute and every second is crucial. The key is that for him, all the formalities, receptions, commendations, and internal rituals that will inevitably occur after flying to 601 are a waste of time. It's not necessary, as long as the drawings can be given to the correct person, that's enough. However, this was just his idea, and in Chen Guo's opinion, it was a bit youthful. Are you still afraid that 601 cannot find someone who can teach you? No, on the contrary, I wish you could find me more teachers. 1.1. I'm worried about consuming too much time. You know, if this blueprint is really important, there will definitely be many activities that I need to participate in, but my time is really tight. Chen Guo nodded slightly, pondered for a moment, and then said. We are both very tight on time. However, you are right. I was not thoughtful enough. I cannot make too big a move now, and I cannot let anyone discover the uniqueness of you and your drawings. I'll have them fly over, and at the same time, I'll find a way to cover up your matter. Don't worry about doing your job, I'll take care of the rest. End of this chapter. Chapter 5. Not just acquiring knowledge. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 5. Not just acquiring knowledge. For Chen Nian, Chen Guo's promise is the best solution. If someone helps them handle all their problems, they will have much less worries. What are your plans next? Chen Guo spoke up and asked. Class, study, and draw component diagrams. Chen Nian replied without hesitation. Do you really want to draw a component diagram? To what extent can you draw it? I don't know, let's start with simple things first. Can the engine be painted? Yes, but it will take time. Chen Nian originally intended to say no, but in the end he still told the truth. This was already within his analysis plan for the power system. Chen Gumiran nodded, not because as a body design engineer, he didn't care about heart problems, but because the continuous impact had dulled his emotions. This can be considered a protective mechanism of the brain. If he continues to get excited, he probably will pout in his own office. How long will it take? I don't know. It could be several months or even a year, and I need a lot of related knowledge, including thermodynamics, materials science, and so on. I'll arrange it for you. Chen Guo nodded with satisfaction, becoming increasingly satisfied with the young man in front of him. Of course, this is definitely not just because of his genius, but because of his unwavering momentum. Yes, whether it's aerodynamics or aircraft configuration, the direction and departure direction are completely different. No matter how well you understand the configuration, you can't just turn your face and design the engine. Even Chen Guo himself only knows a little, not even Mao. Chen Nian obviously doesn't understand either, but what is he saying? It takes time. What does this mean? It means he firmly believes in himself that as long as he is given time, he can do it. Such people can definitely be called top talents in the field of scientific research. They never doubt their abilities, even if they fail, they will only reflect on whether they have not done enough and whether they can do better. Looking back at the decades-long history of modern scientific research in this country, countless predecessors who left their names all have this kind of personality. The magnanimity of sacrificing oneself and the indomitable spirit. Thank you, teacher. If there's nothing else, I'll go back to the library. Chen Nian didn't think too much about it himself. What he cares most about now is the book, Detailed Explanation of Gas Turbine Engines, that he only read a few pages. If he can read it in depth and understand it, he should be able to add 0.1 source points. Go ahead, I'll keep in touch with you. By the way, take this away. I just bought it and it happens to have a new number. Chen Guo flipped out something from under the table, and Chen Nian took it over to see that it was actually a Motorola phone. I understand now, thank you, teacher. Chen Nian did not refuse. He knew that although this thing was valuable, it was essential for his current self. Thank you for your money. Take some money from me and have a good meal. Forget about milk, walnuts, and pig brains. Don't eat pig brains, they can easily damage your stomach. As he spoke, Chen Guo inexplicably took out a stack of money from his wallet and stuffed it into Chen Nian's hand. He then gave a few confidential instructions before finally sending him out of the door. And the bangs that were eagerly waiting at the door finally came with only one sentence from Chen Guo. Xiao Lu, you don't have to come to me again in the future. When you go back, tell your company that the things they have in their hands are too low. Level. Don't even talk about me, my students are not willing to take action. Leaving Chen Guo's office, Chen Nian returned to the library as if nothing had happened, while Li Xiang remained motionless, holding a brief overview of thermodynamics that he had just read. Seeing Chen Nian approaching, he quickly waved excitedly and asked in a low voice. So, what did old Chen say? He said it's pretty good, take it back and take a look. Probably give it a high score. Chen Nian has already compared this caliber with Chen Guo in advance, so it's not difficult to answer. That's great. Old Chen's class is notorious for having a low score. If I can promise you this, there might be more to come. Get a scholarship. Chen Nian chuckled and didn't answer. He has a scholarship in his pocket, which is over 1,000 yuan, enough for him to eat his pig's brain until he vomits. The two chatted casually, and Chen Nian no longer wasted time. He spread out the detailed explanation of the gas turbine engine, opened his notebook again, and began to devote himself wholeheartedly to studying. University knowledge, especially applied knowledge like this, is actually not difficult just in the narrow sense of learning. As long as you are willing to spend time, there is no need to learn or understand it most of the time. The difficulty lies in learning to apply analogies and establish one's own knowledge system in order to enter deeper fields for learning. Many people are floating on the surface, on the level where they can pass the exam, but Chen Nian has no intention of doing so. He wants to truly understand this book. So, compared to Li Xiang beside him, his progress is much slower. Basically, every few pages he reads, he stops to take notes and perform calculations on his own, while also looking for new information to support his progress. After reading it for an afternoon, the book, Detailed Explanation of Gas Turbine Engines, had only been read for over 20 pages, with notes scattered over 10 pages. Not to mention draft paper, the table was full. In addition to those reference books, the entire four-person table was occupied, and Li Xiang was even pitifully squeezed into the corner. However, no one was dissatisfied with this, and even a female classmate at the next table kindly asked Chen Nian to let go of a few books, because even fools knew that the person in front of them was really risking their lives to study. It wasn't until around 6 p.m. that Chen Nian felt like his spirit couldn't hold up anymore, so he put away his notebook and began to organize the materials on the table. Li Xiang naturally helped tidy up, looking at Chen Nian with admiration on his face and saying, "I was quite opened-up-minded today. I knew I used to come to the library with you every day before, but today I finally realized how true ruthless people learn. You're not planning to push this book all over from beginning to end, are you? Just like you pushed the layout of the EP1-10. Almost so. That's basically what's going on. Nyobi. If you really push it this way, writing a book on your own would be enough. How about that? Did you gain a lot today?" Chen Nian nodded slightly and replied. "It's pretty good. It's pretty good. Not only did it increase knowledge, but it also added 0.02 source points. At this pace, shouldn't we be able to proceed with the next analysis in just over a month? 50 days is the journey that Americans can only complete in 50 years. This efficiency makes him willing to learn to death." The two of them packed their things and were about to leave the library when the girl at the table next to them suddenly walked over and said to Chen Nian, "Classmate, can we have a meal together? I would like to ask you for your learning methods." Chen Nian and Li Xiang were momentarily stunned, and then, "Okay. No way. No, it's not what Chen Nian said." The other two awkwardly stood still, and Chen Nian smiled and replied, "Sorry, it's not working lately. My time is a bit tight, and the meal will be fast. I'm afraid you can't keep up." End of this chapter. Chapter 6. Study Abroad. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 6 Study Abroad. At the cafeteria, Chen Nian ran to the window as quickly as possible and cooked the food. Even the dishes were easy to eat stir-fry. One meat and one vegetable, not considered abundant, but nutritious enough. He did also think about using the money Chen Guang gave him to have a good meal, as if celebrating that he had solved a big problem for the country's aircraft design industry. But on second thought, if we want to celebrate, we have to leave it until all the remaining modules are parsed, otherwise we always feel like we're scratching our hearts. When he brought the plate to the table and sat down, Li Xiang had already started, but to his surprise, there were actually other people on the table besides Li Xiang. It's Chen Nian's classmate, Zhang Rui. "Chen Nian, come over here." Zhang Rui waved to Chen Nian with a happy expression on his face, while pushing a bottle of cola on the table to the empty spot. "Here, I brought it for you. How's it going today to see old Chen? What did he say?" Chen Nian walked up to the table, not to mention that he was too lazy to talk to this less familiar classmate, but he simply nodded and then spoke back to Zhang Rui, saying, "Not bad. That means I'll give a high score, nothing else." "Ah. I thought there would be a scholarship." "Old Chen, that's not interesting enough, isn't it? Your drawings are so good. If you ask me, even if you give them directly to graduate students for a project, it's enough. Chen Nian shook her head and answered with a smile. There's no such exaggeration. I consulted with Lao Chen and found that there are still significant issues with the data, which are not very useful anymore, so it was directly rejected. I don't know, right? You can't use such detailed data. Even if there are errors and omissions, it's impossible to deny them all. You're not being tricked, are you? Zhang Rui's deliberately lowered voice appeared somewhat exaggerated, and Chen Nian keenly sensed his implied meaning, so he asked directly. What does being tricked mean? Will he use your data for his graduate students or even research groups? You know, this kind of thing is not uncommon in China. Chen Nian shook her head and replied. Old Chen won't pick me. As soon as these words were spoken, the other two people eating at the same table raised their heads. It's not that Zhang Rui's words are sensational, objective facts exist. But no matter what, speaking it out at such a time may seem a bit ill-intentioned. What do you mean? Chen Nian did not immediately point out, but followed his words and asked further. He wants to know what Zhang Rui, who has a very low sense of presence in the class, wants to say. What I mean is, you need to keep a backup for yourself. How great your achievements are. If it weren't for school, you could have made a lot of money by selling it publicly in the market. Of course, I'm just giving an example. If you really want to use it, you can treat this assignment as a study abroad application material. I think it can add a lot of points. I used to wait here. Studying abroad is not an ordinary thing in this year, and if one can obtain the qualification for public funding, it will also be envied by many people. However, what benefits does Zhang Rui's decision to study abroad benefit him? Forget it, I won't consider studying abroad anymore. It's better to go to China, but I won't go to that kind of shabby place abroad. A surprised expression appeared on Zhang Rui's face. Chen Nian, do you have a fever? Nowadays, both research resources and research environment in Europe and America are much better than ours. If you go out first, you may even get permanent residency. A monthly income of tens of thousands of dollars, isn't it better than earning 3,000 to 4,000 yuan in graduate school after graduation? You have talent and are willing to work hard, go out and learn more new things, and come back to serve the country after completing your studies. Isn't that the same? Serve the country. This word makes Chen Nian feel a bit amused. How many people who went abroad to study in the early 21st century, especially in the high-tech field, finally returned? I am a student of aircraft manufacturing, and I have such a user-friendly system in my hands. I have to go outside for this condition, isn't it a pure breed of resentment? However, Chen Nian didn't say it to death either. He just asked. And you, are you planning to go abroad? I'm definitely going abroad, I'm already preparing for it now. Will you come back then? Zhang Rui was caught off guard by Chen Nian's thoughts and remained speechless for a moment. The scene became somewhat awkward, and he casually took a few bites of food before getting up and leaving, while Li Xiang beside him gave a thumbs up. You're right, Chen Nian. I don't know what this kid is thinking about taking the exam for our school. He came to this school and even chose this major. Isn't that why he came here to build airplanes? I feel like he doesn't fit in with our ideas. Their parents are in business and definitely prioritize their interests. They came here just for the sake of cost-effectiveness. Anyway, everyone has their own aspirations and cannot be forced. Li Xiang nodded in agreement and then continued to ask. Chen Nian, are you really not planning to go abroad? Actually, there are some things he said that make sense. The resources abroad are better. If we can steal. No, if we learn back, it will still be very useful for our country. Chen Nian shook her head and replied. Others' swords are always others' swords. To truly become powerful, one must forge their own swords. Reference and copying are different. Although this statement may sound a bit exaggerated, it's actually just that. Yeah, that's exactly what happened. The two of them quickly finished their meal and rushed back to the library without stopping. For Chen Nian, he still had over 4 hours left to study at night while Chen Nian was studying in the library. On the other hand, Chen Guo was making phone calls one by one in his office. Hey, Lao He, what exactly did Lao Zhao tell you? Did he tell you? That's good. You'll order the soldiers tomorrow and arrange the fastest plane to come over. Yes, fly directly to Chang'an. After landing, there will be someone here to pick you up. Notify the military district. Notify your own military district. This matter needs to be handled as quietly as possible, please don't make any fuss for me. Confidentiality is the top priority, understand? Just understand, come on quickly. Hey Lao Zhao, it's arranged. The internal reporting format is to communicate with top students externally. Yes, there are other students, and I will arrange the main task at the last one. What's your name? Didn't I say it? Chen Nian, keep reciting it. Yes, if we want to add him to the list with permission, I'm not a professional. Let the intelligence department decide. The size of the attendees is approximately 20 people, with only a small number, and the scope of control is limited. I also informed the northeast side, oh, Shifei and Shenfei are one family, don't talk about two families. Qingfei. Hee. I didn't say anything, they can't handle it anymore. Let's take on more responsibilities. Okay, we'll see the specific results later. Don't worry, we won't let you down. Hanging up the last call, Chen Guo breathed a long sigh of relief. At this time, it was already past 8 p.m., and he flipped through the stack of drawings that had been reviewed countless times, feeling mixed emotions in his heart. What a good thing. No matter how deliberately he looked at the data with a picky attitude, he did not find any flaws. Completely natural, beautiful beyond measure. The waves behind the Yangtze River pushed the waves ahead. What is meant by fate? This is it. When the situation was at its most severe, and the entire upper class felt slapped hard due to the Desert Storm operation, and couldn't help but feel dizzy, my students, like the gods descending to earth, sent them a strong shot. Undoubtedly, drawing the body design diagram of the EP1-10 is only the first step, and its symbolic significance still outweighs its actual significance. But without the first step, how can there be countless subsequent steps? Chen Nian, this freshman student, with his own efforts, almost solved the initial difficulties. In this blueprint, there are basically reasonable and correct answers to the questions that once left me puzzled. The progress it brings is bound to be calculated in years. Chen Guo carefully stacked the drawings and hid them in the safe in his office. Then, he made a phone call back home. Wife, help me bring the blanket. I'll be sleeping in the office tonight. It's not a big deal, stay up late to get some data, and I'll be back in a few days. Late night snack. Bring it over, I haven't had dinner yet. End of this chapter. Chapter 7, Chapter 78, Revision and Merge. You're not the protagonist, are you? You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 7, Chapter 78, Revision and Merge. You're not the protagonist, are you? Returning to the library, Chen Nian did not sit with Li Xiang, but found a hidden spot. However, this time he did not continue to read the detailed explanation of the gas turbine engine, but spread out the white paper and began to try to draw the component diagram of the body's exterior. An airplane is composed of thousands of parts, but the body parts are actually the least, mainly structural components, including wing beams, frames, ribs, and wall panels, etc. However, when it comes to the EP1-10, the situation is different. The design of a stealth fighter is much more complex than that of a commercial airliner, and this complexity is mostly reflected in the body configuration. Whether it is the connection process or the overall layout, the components of the F.22 are vastly different from commercial aircraft and even other fighter jets. What Chen Nian needs to do is to reflect these differences on his component drawings. He first started with the galette intake duct, which Chen Guo mentioned earlier. Or rather, a small component of the overall galette intake duct, the boundary layer adsorption device. The structure of this device is not complicated and the technical difficulty is not high, making it the most suitable for official experimental production. It took him nearly 2 hours to draw, but there was no increase in the source point. Only new knowledge can bring source points. It is obvious that the process of drawing is also considered a form of learning, but it uses information already in the mind, so it is not actually within the reward range of the system. However, Chen Nian cannot abandon this job because of this. After all, it is useless to keep things in his mind and they must be presented to others. According to Chen Guo's plan, tomorrow is the time for the presentation at 10 o'clock in the evening. Chen Nian and Li Xiang returned to their dormitory. In fact, compared to those super big exam winners, this time point is not too late. Xi'an University of Technology has an all-night classroom, and whether or not exams are approaching, there are a large number of students studying in the classroom. These people may not all be academic achievers, but they are definitely diligent. However, Chen Nian does not intend to be like them. After this period of probing, he has probably figured out his boundaries. Studying for about 11 hours a day is the most efficient arrangement. Beyond this time, the system's revenue will seriously decline because one's brain actually needs to rest. Treating the system as an efficiency indicator is a new usage. I don't know if it can be developed for other purposes in the future. At this thought, he shook his head slightly. Others have fully functional systems, such as lottery, efficiency improvement, and reward packages, striving to make it easier for the host to achieve their goals. What about myself? Hey, just one function, go straight ahead. But it's still strong enough, that's it. Pushing open the door of the dormitory, Chen Nian first saw his roommate Kai Kuan sitting in his seat playing games. His computer screen showed Diablo 2, which is one of the hottest single-player games of the year. Are you back? Kai Kuan said without lifting his head. I'm back. Did you come back quite early today? Chen Nian made a polite remark. Kai Kuan is not actually a scumbag. He is very intelligent and learns things quickly, but he is not as diligent. Sorry, I don't want to go to the library today. I'll come back after class and play games. By the way, the supervisor just asked you to attend the top students' experience exchange meeting tomorrow, starting at 9 a.m. Li Xiang is also going. It's not like any party-building propaganda, is it? Li Xiang on the side let out a mournful cry, looking unwilling. Chen Nian smiled helplessly. He knew what tomorrow's exchange meeting was for, but he couldn't tell Li Xiang. It's just Li Xiang's reaction that made him feel a bit emotional. There are indeed quite a few formalistic things that this school is tinkering with, and they are also quite annoying. Even in many cases, this formalism has developed to the extent of hindering actual scientific research progress. In addition, due to the poor environment and outdated living facilities, the negative evaluation of this school almost reached its peak around 15.20 years ago. Compared to the students at that time, Zhang Rui, who only wanted to go abroad, was considered gentle. Those who can stay either have a genuine passion or have no choice but who makes it the top professional in domestic aircraft design. If you want to go to the military industry after graduation, then this is the best choice. Of course, besides National University of Defense Technology. However, it would be best if there could be some changes after coming. To change this situation, it is not enough to rely solely on schools. They must produce a batch of explosive scientific research achievements, receive large amounts of financial support, replace outdated blood with truly innovative and innovative research talents. This is indeed very difficult. But for oneself, it may not be too difficult. After all, would it be difficult to make an F.22? Once I have a certain say, I will also solve this problem. By the way, with this in mind, Chen Nian spoke up and comforted, saying, "Don't worry, this time it's definitely not the case. If it's true, we can't invite you. Are you a damn activist? Why is that? I don't feel like I'm a top student either." Just as Li was puzzled, Kai Kun beside him spoke up. "Don't just guess, this time it's Lao Chen who drew, saying that students who perform well in class have a chance. It is said that a group of experts came to inspect and arrange for you to meet and cheer. This opportunity is really good. I was a bit eager to go, but unfortunately I didn't choose it." "Expert? What expert?" Li Xiang suddenly became interested. "Experts from Shifei, Shenfei, and Lao Chen's family. If it weren't for this kind of relationship, you wouldn't have seized this opportunity. After going, it's so nice to listen and talk about it, and give our class a long face. Sleeping slot. So awesome. Don't worry, having a long face may not be guaranteed, but I definitely can't lose face." Li Xiang clenched his fist excitedly, his expression uplifted. "Experts from Shifei and Shenfei. What identity is that?" In his eyes as a freshman, that is a legendary character. Perhaps among those people, there is a big bull who participated in the design of the J.10, and I can actually meet them as a freshman. No, it's not just about meeting, it's about communication. What is communication? The meaning of communication is that both parties have equal status. What a divine opportunity is this. He turned his head and sat back in his seat, starting to prepare for the next day's communication questions. When he saw Chen Nian leisurely packing up his clothes and preparing to take a shower, he asked in confusion. "Chen Nian, aren't you prepared?" Chen Nian shook her head and replied. "There's nothing to prepare for, just act according to the situation." "That's right. You just need to talk about the EP1-10 structure diagram you drew. Hurry up, I don't think we can talk much longer. What do you think I should ask? How can I not show fear in front of them? Is this okay? Hello leader, what do you think of the variable sweep wing design used in the Tuesday 160 and what inspiration does it have for our future strategic bombers? I think what they are more interested in is flying wings. And why are you asking this? If someone asks you what do you understand? How do you answer? Me too, I don't quite understand either. Chen Nian looked at Li Xiang with some amusement. This guy just wanted to make a big splash, but he never thought he would dig a pit and bury himself inside. I think it's better for you to ask about the course design and make a suggestion, saying that the class hours for aerodynamics are too low and need to be increased. Flattering old Chen. Wonderful. Li Xiang took note of this question, although his understanding of the point was completely different from what Chen Nian wanted to express, it didn't matter anymore. In Chen Nian's memory, the aerodynamics course at Xi'an University of Technology went from the initial 160 hours to 80 hours in a few years, which was a tragic setback. If you want to change the atmosphere of this school, at least you have to stop it first. By using Li Xiang's words to speak up and exerting a slight influence on oneself, it will be much easier to solve the problem. Chen Nian no longer cared about Li Xiang, who was buried in preparation, and went to take a shower to rest on his own. However, he didn't expect the other party to hold on to him and discuss a bunch of topics to be discussed in the next day's meeting, leaving Chen Nian speechless. Although having such enthusiasm is good, tomorrow's protagonist, it's really not you. Or rather, not those experts. It's me. End of this chapter. Chapter 8. True Ability to Create. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 8. True Ability to Create. The next morning, Chen Nian and Li Xiang took a leave of absence from the general education class and arrived at the office building. At the entrance of the office building, Chen Nian noticed some people wearing casual clothes, seemingly idle but with serious expressions and sharp eyes. This discovery made his heart skip a beat. Isn't it? Why did the level suddenly become so high? However, What he didn't know was that the reason for the temporary increase in confidentiality level was actually because Shen Fei, an expert in the 5th-generation aircraft direction, saw Chen Nian's data, and he was surprised to find that some of the data was almost identical to the best data they had previously calculated. In this way, the nature of the entire event has completely changed. If Chen Nian's initial achievements were only highly informative, then now they have become highly instructive. The difference in a word is vastly different. So, without changing the original plan, the confidentiality level of this meeting has been quietly raised. Many of the experts who arrived criticized Chen Guo severely, accusing him of not being good at using people. Why didn't such a good seedling be discovered early, and why couldn't the clues be discovered in advance to protect Chen Nian and his achievements? Chen Guo is also very helpless. Who could have predicted this? How do I know if he doesn't draw it? Besides, Chen Nian himself has taken confidentiality measures. According to him, the core data and drawings were drawn without anyone present, and there is no risk of leakage. Being overly neurotic is actually not good either. However, to put it bluntly, he still obeyed the organization and accepted the arrangements of the intelligence department. So, starting from 8 o'clock in the morning, he met with one outstanding student after another along with other experts. The meeting process was dull and uncomfortable because there were too few things to talk about, and in the end, it all turned into empty talk. However, this is also a necessary task, otherwise there is a 1 in 10,000 chance that anyone with a heart will notice the abnormal movements of these experts and be caught at the breakthrough point. Being cautious to the extreme is the style of the intelligence system. Thinking of this, Chen Guo sighed. To be honest, there are indeed many outstanding students in this group, and even dazzling ones are not uncommon. However, only he is truly as dazzling as Chen Nian. Freshman student, hand-drawn F.22 drawings, numerous experts have verified and found no errors or omissions. If I could speak out, it would definitely be an amazing resume. Unfortunately, it's hard to say. Just as he was sitting in a daze, a voice suddenly came from his ear. Next, Chen Nian. He immediately perked up his spirits. Finally arrived. The protagonist is finally about to enter. The security personnel responsible for venue safety opened the door and welcomed Chen Nian, who was at the end of the line. At this point, the entire teaching building has been essentially cleaned up, and it is time to truly discuss the matter. The seats in this venue were arranged in a circular shape to make communication with other students more friendly, but when Chen Nian's name was spoken, all the experts sat on one side of the circular shape. For them, this is a defense. A 1.1 defense. Even Chen Guo, who was sitting in the crowd, could imagine the sense of oppression that such a seat would bring to Chen Nian. Chen Nian, did you draw the blueprint you submitted yourself? Before Chen Nian could sit down properly, a man with grey temples asked. Yes, I drew it myself. What about the process? Just think hard. No, first we will deduce based on existing and relatively public fighter jet appearances, then remove unreasonable parts, and then refer to F.22 images to nest with known logic, and finally come up with a complete self-consistent system. Chen Nian calmly replied. This set of arguments was already thought out by him, and it was also the only reasonable explanation. But if that's the case, your design may not necessarily be correct, there is an element of luck. Of course, I don't know if it's correct or not, after all, everything stays on paper and in my mind. To verify, the only way is to create a model of the aircraft and blow it into a wind tunnel. You're lying. You know, with your own blueprint, we can't replicate the body of the F.22 at all, that's why you're willing to bet, right? Tell me straight, what exactly do you want to do when you hand over this blueprint? The man's eyes were sharp, and he stared straight at Chen Nian, as if trying to see through his soul. Everyone present knew what the man was doing, so no one stopped him. The drawings are certainly true, and even using only a small amount of official data to verify them is enough evidence. He is not malicious towards Chen Nianhuai, he just wants to use high-pressure methods to determine Chen Nian's intentions and eliminate unnecessary risks. What if? What if only a few parts of this drawing are correct, and the rest are fabricated and incorrect data? What if Chen Nian is a spy specifically used to disrupt the research process in China? This kind of thing has happened before, so we have to be cautious. However, to his surprise, Chen Nian did not answer his question at all. We can replicate the organism. What? The man frowned and said with a slight displeasure. Do you think manufacturing a machine body is that simple? Although there are few parts, whether it is the accuracy of structural components, the strength of connecting components, or even the number of threads per screw, they all need to be specially designed. With just this picture, you can at most explain some problems in principle. If you want to make it, it's still far from enough. Upon hearing the man's words, others nodded in unison. Yes, design and manufacturing are completely different in terms of difficulty. Being able to design doesn't necessarily mean being able to manufacture. After all, the design of the J-20 aircraft actually appeared in the 1980s. Everyone scrutinized Chen Nian with skeptical eyes, but most of them let go of their guard. Sure enough, this is just a young and ambitious genius with extraordinary talent. He may have exceptional talent in design, but lacks the ability and knowledge to truly put it into practice. However, such thoughts had not yet been reflected on the expression in his mind. The next second, Chen Nian's action stunned everyone. He took out the structural diagram of the boundary layer adsorption device that he had just drawn the night before. This is the boundary layer adsorption device of the Galette inlet, which can be considered a small component in the core design of the EP1-10. I can draw the structural diagram of every component that I have deduced in my mind. After pausing for a moment, Chen Nian continued. Including the number of turns of the screw. As the words fell, the venue fell silent. Everyone gathered together in tacit agreement, looking at the structural diagram presented by Chen Nian. No one speaks, they are all real experts, so there is no need to discuss the authenticity of such a structural diagram. A few minutes later, someone tentatively spoke up. If every component has such a design drawing, can we really create it? End of this chapter. Chapter 9. Lectures. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 9 Lectures. Hey, hello, Chen Nian, don't mind your previous attitude. I'm also here for work. You know, the current situation is not good, there are too many bad elements. By the way, look at me, I've forgotten to introduce myself. My name is Lei Gang, an engineer from 601 Institute, and I can also be considered an old aerospace engineer. You can call me Lao Lei. After confirming the authenticity of the component diagram, the tone of the man who first questioned Chen Nian changed dramatically. Of course, his original tone was just a pretense, as Chen Nian had guessed from the beginning. What kind of making screws and the like is just an excuse to deliberately hit him? What screws are needed for wind tunnel experiments? Just come up with a shell and blow it off. But he doesn't blame the other party at all, because this era doesn't seem like the 2020s he's familiar with. What is the best blessing on the internet at this time? Next life in America. What is the most earnest expectation? Wang Shi from the south has been looking for another year. What is the most vicious insult? 5 cents. In this environment, being cautious is no problem. However, thinking of this, Chen Nian's thoughts couldn't help drifting away a bit. He thought that many children born after 2000 do not remember this era because their environment has actually improved a lot. They have not truly experienced or deeply experienced that period of struggle, nor have they experienced why the overall atmosphere of a country can improve. Perhaps this is a fragile pride. If you want to solidify this pride, either smash it and reassemble it, or work hard to add bricks and tiles to it. Without a doubt, one should choose the latter. With this in mind, Chen Nian withdrew his thoughts and answered Lei Gang with a smile. Lei Gong, it's okay, I can understand. That's good, that's good. Oh, by the way, we can basically understand this absorption device and there must be no other problems. Can you give us a rough overview of the other parts now? Of course, not a problem. Upon hearing Chen Nian's answer, many experts present all return to their seats. At this moment, they seem to have returned to their student days. No one has shown any awkwardness about this. They are all extremely pragmatic experts who know the truth that in a team of 3, there must be one teacher. Where do we start? Chen Nian sat solemnly in the chair and asked. Let's talk about the overall configuration of the fuselage first. Chen Nian nodded, pondered for a moment, and then said. Overall, the front fuselage section of the F.22 is a non-standard diamond shape, while the middle fuselage section is pentagonal and gradually transitions to a flat rectangular section of the rear fuselage. Looking from the front, the lower part of the fuselage is inclined inward by about 35 degrees, with a ridge from the top of the nose to the leading edge of the air intake. This ridge-shaped front body can avoid the main direction of radar wave threat. The F.22 also adopts the edge strip wing vortex lift technology that is also used in third-generation aircraft. The narrow edge strip from the inlet to the wing root and the ridge line of the front fuselage form an edge strip that extends from the vertex of the nose to the wing root. The front fuselage and inlet are integrated into a lift body, increasing the area of the edge strip's action and assisting in improving the lift of the main wing surface at small angles of attack. Eddies are generated at high angles of attack, thereby obtaining stronger vortex lift. Chen Nian spoke eloquently, not only describing shapes, but also interspersed with interpretations of design principles. All the experts present were mesmerized by the sound, and to be honest, these things were not very profound because Chen Nian did not interpret the specific principles and data. However, even such an introduction presents a very clear logic, which undoubtedly proves one point. He is extremely familiar with this plane. Realizing that he can use memory to express the vast majority of design intentions in language. However, calculation is still a crucial issue. So when Chen Nian stopped to drink water, Reagan spoke up and asked. How did you make assumptions about the calculation of wing vortices? I calculate backstepping through vortex-induced drag. The F.22 is quite unique, as its wing design reduces wingtip vortices, but the upper surface vortices become more complex. To calculate this problem, we need to comprehensively consider aspect ratio, vortex-induced drag, lift, and wingtip vortex strength. For this, I found relatively accurate photos, measured the aspect ratio and area of F.22, assumed a CI value, inferred CDI, and then gradually adjusted to obtain basically logical data. Is it that simple? No, it's not easy either, but how do you verify it? Reagan asked in confusion. It can't be verified, how else would it be said to be made? Also, what are your criteria for judging whether it is correct? Beauty. Beauty. Yes, if a weapon is powerful and precise, then it must first be beautiful. It must conform to all human aesthetics of weapons. It must have smooth curves, sharp edges, and just the right proportion. I find it difficult to explain, perhaps I have a unique intuition about this aesthetics. Be enlightened. Everyone present was shocked by Chen Nian's speech. They all heard this statement for the first time. If a weapon is powerful, it must be beautiful. Seemingly absurd, but upon careful consideration, what powerful weapon is not beautiful? Is a white swan beautiful? Is the F.22 beautiful? Is the Roosevelt beautiful? Are intercontinental missiles standing up one by one beautiful? Not only beautiful, but even beautiful enough to shake people's hearts. Of course, many people may not experience this kind of beauty, but what they can experience is undoubtedly intuition with innate talent. For a moment, everyone had the same idea in their minds. This Chen Nian belongs to me. Never let others steal it. And right across from them, Chen Nian couldn't help but feel a bit comical as he watched the crowd fall into shock. He remembered that the concept of weapons being beautiful was proposed and promoted by the man who was known as the strongest strategic weapon, as if after that, the weapons and equipment of China did indeed become more beautiful. Now I have plagiarized his viewpoint in advance to explain for myself. Perhaps it can also be considered as helping these engineering men improve their aesthetics in advance. I understand. Relying on intuition to think is indeed a very feasible method in research, but validation definitely needs to be done. Let's talk about specific parts. We need to quickly build this thing. Looking at Lei Gang's impatient expression, Chen Nian smiled and replied. This question is not so easy to explain, so I'll just pick the adsorption device you have in your hand and explain it. Please give me some more time for specific other designs. I need to organize my thoughts and take them step by step out of my mind. End of this chapter. Chapter 10. Snatching People. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. Chapter 10 Snatching People. The meeting with Chen Nian lasted for a full 2 hours, during which there was a natural process of repeated deliberation, verification, questioning, and answering. The intensity was high and frightening, but for Chen Nian, this was not a problem at all. With a system bonus, his access to knowledge becomes incredibly simple, like having a supercomputer in his mind. With just an instant effort, he can retrieve the answers he needs. Of course, this is only limited to the parts that have already been analyzed, and once it comes to the basic principles, he can't bear it anymore. But fortunately, he was also a military industry practitioner in his previous life, working as a basic engineer for more than a decade, and his foundation was still there, so it's not like he was completely in the dark. Overall, this meeting has left both sides extremely satisfied. The expert group is naturally satisfied with finding the treasure. Although it has not been verified in practice yet, judging only from Chen Nian's knowledge and literacy, the probability of this plan being feasible is also high, and the most that needs to be done is some adjustments and corrections. With the framework in place, how difficult can correction be? For Chen Nian, his satisfaction is mainly reflected in his own gains. Not only the promised scientific research resources, but also 2 experts on the spot plan to stay as his 1.1 teachers. Then Chen Guo glared back with a blank eye. Are you kidding me? I'm still here. They all work in aerodynamics, why are you stronger than me? Oh Chen, you mainly focus on high angle of attack mechanics. Is it too difficult? Compared to me, who specializes in thermal analysis, it's not as easy to get started. I think it's better for me to teach. What did you say, Lao Meng? I'm still a comprehensive structural mechanics student. Why didn't you say to let me come? What's there to teach you? We've already made the EP1-10, and we're still learning a damn comprehensive structure. It needs to be applied. Don't talk nonsense between you two. I've been his teacher for 2 months now, no matter what. Is there also a change of teacher midway? You can't stand in the pit. Who are you talking about? Who are you talking about? As everyone became anxious, Chen Nian quickly stepped forward to smooth the situation. Everyone, stop making noise. Actually, there's nothing difficult to solve this problem. I want it all, take turns teaching me. How about that? In fact, Chen Nian knew that these 3 people wanted to be their 1.1 teachers simply because they wanted to have more contact with themselves in order to achieve results faster. This cannot be said to be selfish, it can only be said that they all have a sense of pride in their own abilities, always feeling that doing it themselves is the best. However, Chen Nian doesn't want to get used to their exclusivity. Anyway, it's something we need to learn, so let's do it together. What are you afraid of? Just spend more time. I am worried about the low efficiency of searching for data. Now that I have 3 databases, isn't it comfortable to explode? Upon hearing Chen Nian's words, the 3 of them also reacted. Yeah, this event is clearly going to evolve into a big project, and at that time, none of these 3 of us can actually take control. Everyone has to obey the arrangements. What are you arguing for? Just do as he says. So, the problem was easily solved, and then everyone began to discuss the matter of project approval. Now Chen Nian's achievements can be said to have passed the initial review, and the next step is to submit them to a higher-level decision-making team for project approval. During the project process, Chen Nian will naturally play a key role, so his suggestions are also important. Do you have any opinions on the project organization method? Lei Gang, standing aside, spoke up and asked. Yes, and it's very important. Oh. Tell me about it. I must ensure my frontline decision-making power so that I can decide on any details related to design. I don't want situations where I propose a suggestion that requires repeated discussion before it can be approved. It's a bit difficult. Are you so confident in yourself? Lei Gang hesitated a bit. This request was not too excessive, but Chen Nian's qualifications were too low. Giving him such great power was a bit inappropriate in both emotion and reason. Mainly because he has not yet produced verifiable results. If he really decides on all experimental directions, the project team will bear a great risk. After all, no one knows how much success rate can be achieved in the end. I am very confident. Chen Nian replied without hesitation. Upon hearing his answer, Lei Gang gritted his teeth and spoke. Okay, let me make this request. The higher-ups should consider my suggestion, but for safety reasons, it would be best if you could come up with something else. It's not that I don't believe you, some things just work that way. Chen Nian nodded and replied. I understand. How about the complete component structure diagram of the full motion tail, flaps, and intake duct? Do you have any ideas? Upon hearing these words, everyone's faces immediately turned around. These are all core components of the EP1-10 body design. Even if it is a full motion flat tail, although it sounds like that, to ensure invisibility, its design is also crucial. I need some time. Okay, I'll give you time. How long will it take? 1 month. Chen Nian's face showed a look of embarrassment, and Lei Gang looked at it and secretly regretted it. I am really in a hurry. The complexity of these things is not comparable to the previous adsorption device. It's a bit difficult to give them for only 1 month. He patted his forehead and said. I'm too anxious. You should take your time at your own pace and also pay attention to rest. How about 3 months? If it's really not possible, just owe it for now. I'll help you withstand the pressure. But to his surprise, Chen Nian still shook his head. I don't mean that. What I mean is that our project will take a month to start. I don't require all personnel and equipment to be in place, at least we need to organize the team and conduct preliminary theoretical model validation. Lei was taken aback for a moment and replied. The project doesn't need that long. We will report it today, and the team will start data validation no later than the day after tomorrow. The model will start running the day after tomorrow. What's wrong? Wait, are you feeling too slow? Chen Nian nodded. 1 week, at most 2 weeks, I will submit the drawings. At that time, I hope to officially join the team and the project team can officially start working. As soon as these words were spoken, everyone fell into silence again. Chen Gua stood on the side, looking at the expressions of everyone with a half-smile. At this moment, he suddenly had a wonderful sense of superiority. Hee, you guys who haven't seen the world before. Do you still not know what monster is standing in front of you? Surprise is inevitable, but soon you will get used to it. He seemed to forget that at noon the day before, his face was the same as others. End of this chapter.